In our next few YouTube videos, I'm going to talk about antidepressants. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the history of how they came to be formed. Doctors back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s were trying to find cures for things like diabetes, tuberculosis, polio, bacterial infections, that type of thing. They had a specific disease process within the human body they were looking at. They were able to take cells or bacteria out of the body and look at them under a slide and put agents on them to see how does those cells react to that. Out of that came different antibiotics, insulin treatments, and treatment for tuberculosis. Well, by the 1940s and 50s, the psychiatry division wanted to prove that they were real doctors and that they were actually legitimate medical people. And one way to do that was to come up with drug treatments. So they were looking for how can we treat mental illnesses, schizophrenia in particular at that time, and then depression and bipolar and things along those lines with drugs, and how do we prove the drugs work, and how are we going to get our drugs, and that type of thing. Well, what started to happen is they would treat patients, say, for tuberculosis, and one of the side effects of the drug was the patients were getting up and dancing. At least that's what's reported. And all of a sudden their moods were lifted and they weren't having anxiety and they were really happy. So the psychiatry division of medicine said, hey, that would probably help depressed people. Let's give that to them. So this is how antidepressants started to form. They had no real disease process they could measure. They weren't putting agents against that and saying, hey, look at how it reacts to this or look at how it reacts to that. They only came up with the drugs based on side effects from drugs being used to treat actual biological processes. During that time, the doctors were being interviewed like crazy about these huge breakthroughs they were having in the treatment of mental disorders in the United States. And the Time magazine in 1957 did an interview with one of these psychiatrists, and he made the statement, oh, antidepressants are just like insulin. Insulin keeps you alive, and so do antidepressants. And for some reason, people grabbed onto that. And even today, I have people say that to me, or I hear it. And really, what people don't realize is that was the infancy of psychotropics, neuroleptics, antidepressants. And during its infancy, that's what they wanted to believe. And yet, by the end of the 1960s, that was proven to be completely debunked, that you do not need antidepressants like insulin. People will actually die without insulin, and they will not die without antidepressants. So I want you to keep that in mind as we move through the next few videos. Next time I'm going to talk about side effects and how the antidepressants are supposed to work, and then I'm going to talk about long-term outcome studies, and then I'm going to talk about the proper way to approach stepping down. I'm Dr. Pauline Dillard, and this has been a Dunamas moment.